essentially the same money is there, the same fee is there, it just is in a different
Code section.
entity.
Okay, so, all right, so it's,
Yeah, so that part of this bill is actually just a code change. That's not the substantive change that we're seeking. Delegate Havid?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm reading this and I just want to make sure I'm right. I mean, you're making a formally refundable fee non-refundable. You're moving a $25 fee to $100. You're adding a $25 fee to these annual filings that don't currently have any fee, which is on 141 down, articles of incorporation, domestication, articles of amendment, mergers, all that stuff now gets a fee for the first time. Am I reading that right?
I don't think so. I think
All right, line
it looks that way because we rearranged some of the fee statutes just to make them correspond with the proper filings.
All right, well, Mr. Chairman, all I know is there's new language in here that adds, it looks like a $25 fee on line 141 down, a $10 fee on line 158 down, a $6 fee on line 167 down. Maybe they're striking those fees somewhere else and moving it here.
I think what he's saying is that somewhere, we've already we did that last year, year before last, and it's already law somewhere, and you're just reorganizing.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And there's no new money. There's no new money coming to the commission.
Correct. It's
well,
just
hold on a second, Mr. Chairman.
Is there? Yes.
All right, so let's just look at line 380. Do you have a line bill there? A bill with lines on it, you know, the numbers on the left?
yes.
Okay, so just go to line 380. And it looks like it says the document shall be accompanied by a fee. And then shall be 25 is marked through.
Yes.
And then it says of 100.
Yes.
So what is that?
That $100 fee that you're looking at was in a different act, or probably currently is in a different section of the code, a different act. It's the same, these articles of entity conversion have always had a $100 filing fee connected with them. Just, we're rearranging them this year to go along with the substantive changes that were made to the statutes last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think right.
Again, if we're rearranging, it's renumbering the existing fee sections. It makes it look like there's a fee increase, but it is not.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, and I totally understand the confusion because that's how I read it as well, but part of this is that since we're touching this code section for a substantive change, which is about the non-refundable fee, there were other sections within the same code section that was outdated based on another law that changed. So if you read it really carefully, it's not an increase of a fee from 25 to 100. The $25 refers to one fee, $100 refers to another. When they recodified it, if you look at number 1, number 2, the new language goes to the fee that was in another section code. The amount that we're striking out is back on line 2. So I know it's really confusing. It took me a while to figure this out, but those, I will tell you, that part is not new law. That's not changes. That's purely procedural codification.
All right. Any other questions of the patron? I think our attorney is sharing it with Delegate Farrell down there that getting some legal advice. But anyway, anyone else in the audience wish to be heard for or against this? Yes. Delegate Ransom.
Mr. Chairman, so just, I mean, as I understand, we're not refunding fees when a business applies for some, files for something, State Corporation Commission. But Delegate Keene said we are not increasing fees. We are not increasing fees, but we're not refunding a filing fee.
So the bill that we're looking at, 2110, right?
Right.
That bill says that a company that files a number of different types of filings, if that filing were to not be accepted in the long run, currently they can get a refund for the fact that they filed it with a fee. What the SEC would like to propose is that they don't receive a refund on that because the processing and the work that they actually put into processing it, they've already spent that amount in their efforts. And so that part is one section. What we just talked about in terms of increasing the fee or not increasing the fee is the second part of the bill that is just pure codification. So there are no fee increases in this bill. I know it reads like that, but none of those amounts that are changed, that struck through and added, are substantive changes in the amounts being increased. Just want to make sure that that's absolutely clear.
Delegate Ransom, does that answer your question? Delegate Posse? Never mind.
Mr. Chairman,
Delegate Farrell?
I'd still call the attention of folks, though, that they are making a fee that wasn't fundable, non-refundable.
Yep, that's the substance of it. And the theory behind it, apparently, according to the SEC, is that the work that they did when they processed the application originally far exceeds the cost of the SEC in terms of the fee that they receive. And so by the time they process a refund and then send it back, the SEC is actually spending more money to refund something, and then turning around and then having that company file again. In that case, they would receive another fee. So they give a refund, get another fee. So instead of doing that, they're saying the first time you pay, that's it, but you get up to 12 months to correct your fees, your application, so you don't have to file another fee again. So in some ways it evens out, but in other ways, you're absolutely right that it is, from a business perspective, if you file something erroneously, or if your filing doesn't get accepted, then going forward, the SEC would consider that to be a processing fee and not a refundable fee for something that they would be accepting. Now, just as a kind of foresight here, the second bill that I have here, 2111, actually would generate revenues for the businesses in a similar capacity, because we're doing an online application, which we'll get into that in a second. So the two bills combined will probably even things out at the SEC in terms of the actual amount of new fees versus fees that the SEC will be absorbing on behalf of businesses.
All right. Any more questions? Anybody in the audience wish to be heard for or against? All right, we operate on a motion. Have a motion to report in second. Members ready to vote? Vote on electronic voting board. Clerk will close the roll.
Yeah.
Yes, King. It'd be 7. Okay, clerk close the roll. It's you got to vote again. All right, everybody vote again. Clerk will close the roll. House Bill 2110 fails 7-10. All right, Delegate King.
Sure. 2111 is, it came out of the same set of recommendations that the SEC had. And this one is trying to encourage companies to file things electronically to avoid the paperwork that goes back and forth. Obviously, as we know, most government agencies are now heading into e-filings. As you probably know from your own personal filings with taxes or anything else, whenever you use a third-party credit card processing agent, they assess a 2-3% surcharge onto your credit card transactions. And that could add up to a lot of amounts that the business guys would be spending on top of whatever the filing fee is. So the SEC is proposing that the SEC absorb that fee of 1.95%, 2%, 3%, in the hopes and with the understanding that that will encourage more electronic filing, which then ends up offsetting the cost that the agency will have for processing everything by paper and the mailing costs. And so there is a budget implication to the SEC, which comes out to about $1.1 million by absorbing the fees. This year it would be about 790-something thousand. Going forward it would be about 1.1. We did put in a budget amendment in the appropriations, but my understanding from the SEC is that currently, based on their operation costs, at least the first year or so, they can absorb that without having to get the budget funded. So to the extent that you're thinking about the appropriations end of it, this bill would not necessarily go forward and fail based just on the budget implication alone, although we did put in the budget amendment as well.
All right, any questions for me? I should have had this one first, shouldn't
Well, yeah, I was going to, but then the numbering came off the wrong way.
I? All right.
And by the way, Mr. Chairman, both bills were proposed to the State Bar Business Law section, and nobody had a concern or opposition to it.
All right, anybody in the audience wish to be heard for or against House Bill 2111? All right, members,
Chairman,
yes,
move to report.
have a motion, second. All right, Mr. President, vote by electronic voting board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 2291.
Thank you. This is a simple modification to the language concerning the power plant and modification to the nuclear plant under 56-585 and others. Basically, what it is Dominion has two nuclear power plants in Virginia, North Anna, North Anna in Louisa County and Surrey, and they provide about 30% of the around-the-clock, low, stable cost power with no pollution at any time. And basically, what this legislation does is clarifies that the current law regarding major modifications to power plants applies to the cost of extending licenses and the useful life for existing nuclear plants. It doesn't affect the efforts to build a third nuclear unit at North Anna because that application is still under review by the federal government. Does not change in any way the SEC's authority to decide whether the investments needed to extend the life of nuclear units are reasonable, prudent, or in the public interest. And I think I do have an amendment to it to make sure that there was some concern that there may be some recovery of cost, excess cost that might have occurred. So we're making sure that it would just be in the reasonable manner. So I do have.
Frank, did you want to report the amendment?
Yes, the amendment is on page 6 at line 333. After utilizing nuclear power, insert the phrase constructed pursuant to clause 2.
And I think that language, constructed pursuant to clause 2, shows that this is just a maintenance type. And the cost of this maintenance is estimated to be $3 to $4 billion total for all 4 units. And the SCC approves the needed investments. And these are like new control room technology, steam turbines, generators, things of that. And they're going to take place over a period of several years. This is not something you can do overnight, and will not would be offset in partially by fuel savings. So that's the bill. I know that I have someone here to speak in favor of the bill.
Yes, come forward.
Did you all adopt the amendment?
No, we have a motion to adopt the
We
amendment.
could adopt the amendment, otherwise it's,
All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Okay, we got your amendment.
Madam Chairman, Delegate Kilgore has told you about the importance of the nuclear plant to Dominion's fleet at this point. It's also important to note that these plants have about 2,000 jobs there, and they have about $3 billion in economic activity annually that they support. Equally as important, the nuclear units allow Dominion to have a diversity of fuel, so they are not dependent on any particular resource and how they provide electricity to everybody. And we really think it is in the best our intention is to apply to the NRC in 2019 to extend the license for all 4 of the units in Virginia. If we're not able to relicense these facilities, we'd have to replace a large portion of our generating fleet, and Virginia would become increasingly dependent upon natural gas as a fuel, and the cost of that fuel is substantially higher than the cost of nuclear fuel. If the nuclear units are to operate for another 20 years, there are going to be some substantial improvements that have to be made. You're going to have to replace the generator turbines, you're going to have to replace the operating systems in the control room to assure that those facilities will operate safely and efficiently for the next 20 years. That cost, as Delegate Kilgore has told you, is going to be between $3 and $4 billion, about $3.5 billion to do that work. But it's important to recognize that if we do that work, the fuel savings will be 3 times that amount, because we will not have to purchase alternative fuels to the uranium that is in the nuclear plants. In the 2007 REG Act, you all established a mechanism to encourage generation. It's worked quite well. It deals with both new generation and with major modifications of facilities. The upgrades and replacements that we're going to do on the nuclear facilities, the company feels are major modifications. But nuclear plants are not upgraded that often, and we're kind of leading the charge in the nation on the upgrade of the licensing of nuclear plants. And so we wanted to make sure from this legislation that it was clear that the money we're going to spend is a part of the major modification of these units. That's the reason we requested this legislation. There has been some question about whether there's an enhanced return for this money. That's the purpose of the amendment that the chairman or Delegate Kilgore has offered. It is not Dominion's intention that there be an enhanced rate of return for this expenditure. This is going to be at the normal rate of return as we go through. And finally, as Delegate Kilgore said, this is not going to affect North Anna. That's a separate issue. It's under separate consideration. We certainly appreciate your support of the legislation.
Do you have anyone else that wants to?
Madam Chair, thank you, Brett Massey, Virginia Manufacturers Association. We appreciate the patron and the amendment we support, and we support the underlying bill. We encourage you to pass it.
Anyone else? Come on down.
Good afternoon. My name is Sama Bilbao Leon. I am currently the chairperson for the board for the Virginia Nuclear Energy Consortium, or VNEC. As you probably know, VNEC was established by the Virginia Institute in 2013, and we began operating in 2015. Our mission is to sustain and enhance the Commonwealth of Virginia as a national and global leader in nuclear energy, and serving as an interdisciplinary business development, research, training, and information resource on nuclear energy issues. So from the research and education that we do at our state universities to the generation that powers our homes, going through a world-class nuclear manufacturing and services industry that we have at Areva and BWX Technologies, and of course our U.S. nuclear Navy shipyards in Newport News. Nuclear is critical to Virginia's future success in economic development, but also as far as our leadership in this industry. Currently, as you know, our state gets 39% of its electricity from nuclear energy. Our nuclear education and research opportunities available in our state colleges and universities are second to none. We are currently educating the next generation of nuclear professionals who will have access to high-paying, high-technology jobs. The nuclear shipyards at Newport News build submarines and aircraft carriers to our nuclear base. So VNEC is here today to voice our support for Bill HB 2291. This bill advances Virginia's continued leadership in applications of nuclear technology. This legislation will incentivize continued investment in our existing nuclear facilities to keep them up to date and extend their operating life so they will continue to provide clean, reliable, and affordable power to all Virginians. The investments in system and equipment upgrades and replacement are more cost-effective than new generation. So this will allow the state to receive the benefits of existing nuclear generation, reliable baseload power, jobs, economic benefits, clean air, while keeping the electric rates down for our residents. So we urge you to support this bill and help ensure Virginia's continuing role as a national leader in nuclear power generation, education, and defense. Thank you very much for having us here today and for your consideration of this important bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the bill? Please tell us who you are.
Yes, thank you. My name is Erica Gray. I live in Henrico, Virginia. I'm also the chair of Virginia Sierra Club, and I follow issues related to nuclear energy here in Virginia. I also attend the NRC meetings and DOE meetings as well, and so I'm aware of Virginia Dominion Power moving forward with requesting a subsequent license renewal. Essentially, this bill is giving Dominion a blank check. It is also an attempt to hinder the ability for the State Corporation Commission to do its job, which is to protect Virginia ratepayers. And in the bill, it's quoted that this measure also limits its scope of the requirement that a utility demonstrate that it has considered and weighed alternative options, including third-party alternatives, in its selection process to certain new generation facilities. And as was mentioned earlier about these dates, I want to be clear, Dominion Power's 4 nuclear reactors, both 2 at Surrey and 2 at North Anna, have already received the NRC license renewal, the first renewal, that will take these plants, Surrey 1 to 2033, Surrey 2 to 2033, 32 for, Surrey 1 license expires in 2032, Surrey 2 in 2033, North Anna in 2038, and North Anna 2 in 2040. So what Dominion's looking for on the subsequent license renewal is actually taking it 20 years beyond the 60. And Dominion's plans, like was mentioned earlier, is not to submit this second license renewal that will run the plants for 80 years to the NRC until 2019. So what's the hurry? As it goes for public information about this proposed legislation, there's only been a couple of articles that I've been able to find. WHS V3 ABC, Dominion is currently seeking legislation to clarify that it can recover $3.5 billion it plans and extending the life of its nuclear power plants in Virginia by 20 years. And also, Dominion spokesperson Zurcher is quoted, a subsequent license renewal would probably require the replacement of cables and 3 steam generators. The fact is that all this is premature, as the NRC has still not finished reviewing nor publishing what is needed to run any nuclear reactor up to 80 years. It's never been done before. As it goes for Surrey North Anna, Dominion has been maintaining the facilities. They've been patching, they've been plugging tubes, they've been putting on metal well overlays, but it doesn't change the fact that most of the important large and expensive components are old. We could spend billions refurbishing these facilities only to find out in the end we have a seriously embrittled pressure reactor vessel. And ongoing studies at the NRC, they're trying to figure out exactly what that means. This could lead to very expensive stranded assets, or worse, a nuclear disaster. I think we should take lessons learned from San Onofre plant 2 years ago. ago had to permanently close because they were looking at extending their license beyond the 60 years, well, actually beyond the first 40. And they ended up spending almost $700 million for some steam generators that ended up being a botched job. It led to a radiation leak and then ultimately a permanent closure. And in closing, I want to mention, and the paper I gave out to all the members, is on January 11th this year, 2017, the NRC finally released the names of 17 reactors here in the U.S. that possibly have defective parts, components from a Rivas SA creosote forge, and the probe is ongoing. And yes, Surrey and North Anna are on that list. Perhaps this legislative body could inquire exactly what parts and what tests have been done to assure the Virginia citizens that these plants are currently safe. This bill, like I stated, is premature. We're talking about years in advance, so I'm not sure why there's a hurry to pass this and let the SEC do its job. So please oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to speak in opposition to the bill? Does any of our expert members want to ask any questions? Delegate Ware.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a couple of questions. I think it probably would be the State Corporation Commission that oversees
Yes, Delegate.
looking at the description of the bill in our folder, it's a long paragraph, and looking at the bill itself, there's probably 4 lines that are modestly affected. That disjuncture makes me think there's maybe a little bit more to this than the few italicized words in the text of the bill itself. So I guess my question to you, and I'm particularly looking at line 345, and actually backing up to, well, the other was 242 and 3 and 4, and then 258. They obviously are intended to give you direction on how the State Corporation Commission would review a request from Dominion. Could you describe to me how this changes the way you would currently address an application if this were to pass?
When the Regulation Act was passed back in 2007, it included, and I'm looking at line 241, major unit modifications of generation facilities as a type of rate adjustment clause application that could be filed by incumbent utilities. So what this legislation does, as has been previously explained, is it makes clear in the code that such unit modifications would include the costs of these nuclear unit life extensions as have been described by the patron. Now, obviously, every application that comes in from a utility has to be considered on a case-by-case basis, and the Commission does that pursuant to the Regulation Act generally and pursuant to A6 of 588 5.1 specifically. But that would be the guidance from the General Assembly in terms of how the Commission should look at an application for unit modifications.
And in interpreting that guidance, what does it tell you that we are saying to you?
Well, it's pretty clear in the language of the amendment itself. It says basically unit modifications of generation facilities include That's the guidance.
In the text of the bill, the text of the bill summary, there are a couple of things that are stated. One is that the measure limits the scope of the requirement that a utility demonstrate it has considered and weighed alternative options. I take that to mean if it limits how many alternate methods of providing electricity, that option might be. Is that correct?
I'm looking for the amendment, maybe Frank can help me.
On line 278, they've added the phrase described in clause 2. So as I read it, only new generation would you have to look at the alternatives.
Right. Yeah, utility seeking approval to construct or purchase a generating facility described in clause 2. This is clause 3. So Frank's right, we're talking about new facilities.
Okay. And then later it says that provides the utility that makes modifications to certain generation facilities has the right to recover costs and an enhanced rate of return on common equity to the same extent currently provided for construction.
I think the amendments that were offered here today were intended to clarify that in this case, clause 3 was not entitled to an enhanced return.
If I could speak to that,
Certainly.
Delegate Ware, the reference in the summary, which was obviously drawn before the amendment was added to the bill, looks at the language on line 258. We've added or makes modifications to any such facility. So this would pick this up. On line 261, shall have the right to recover the cost of the facility. And it goes on at the lines 265 and 266, plus as an incentive to undertake such projects, an enhanced rate of return on common equity. The amendment that was adopted was after the summary was prepared, and that removed the enhanced rate of return on common equity because of line 333. We've said that enhanced rate of return is eligible only for nuclear power constructed pursuant to clause 2, and again, this is being done under clause 3.
So, as a layman looking at it, what we're doing is we're adding this reconstruction that's anticipated as in the same fashion as new construction of this type. Would that be accurate?
Subdivision A6 of this section says that utilities can get rate adjustment clauses for purposes of recovering plant construction. And this includes major unit modifications. And this language is a clarification of what major unit modifications shall include or could include. So it's major unit modifications were already part of the Regulation Act in terms of something that utilities can get a rate adjustment clause for. This just clarifies what major unit modification means with respect to nuclear life extension.
Absent this legislation, would these modifications be included in, would those costs be included in your review in this fashion?
It's possible that if a utility came in for a major unit modification concerning nuclear life extension, that they would file an application under this A6 RAC, and they would ask the Commission to determine that the nuclear life extension cost they were about to incur was a major unit modification. Whether it was or wasn't in whole or in part would be an issue for the Commission to determine based upon the nature and the details of the application submitted.
Which in layman's terms means that you think you might be able to decide to determine this under the current regs that you have in place.
Under the current legislation.
Under this legislation?
No, I mean, under the current law, under the current law.
Okay.
I hope my answer was clear. If not, please let me know.
Well, I'll say it back, and what I understand you to say is you have the authority and the expertise to determine what we are being asked to determine today legislatively.
It's a question of how the commission would apply the law to a particular application, and that application would contain the details. And if the application was for an A6 rate adjustment clause for a major unit modification for a nuclear life extension, the commission would determine based on the application as filed whether or not it would construe the legislation to pick that up.
But we've helped decide if, assuming this bill passes, which I think may be a fair assumption, we've made that determination for you.
You've provided guidance to the commission in that respect.
What's the question?
Doug Kilgore.
Maybe what I can answer is without this deal, also there's a possibility they would get that enhanced return that I think out in that big law.
I'm not sure. I'd have to get back to you on that. I mean, in terms of how the language would be applied.
Possible though, that they could ask for it. That's, I think now they can't.
I think they could ask for it. I'm not sure whether, given the existing language, they would or wouldn't get an enhanced return, but this would eliminate that possibility.
That's why I brought that with you, to make sure that it's didn't occur.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Doug Kilgore, do you want to say any final words?
You've heard the deal. I don't want to take it.
Okay. Committee, have any questions? We work on a motion.
I'm sorry, may I ask you one moment, please? Excuse me?
Ma'am, you've been already up here for a long time.
I understand, but I just want clarification, please.
Doug Kilgore?
Just one moment, please.
I'd like to know what are the measures in this bill they're asking for that limits the scope of requirement that the utility demonstrate that it has considered and weighed alternative options. I would just like to know how is that going to be demonstrated?
You can't ask questions from the audience. If you want to make a statement, that's one thing. Now, if Delegate Kilgore wants to address that, that's fine, but
Okay.
thank you. Okay, we have anything else from the committee? We have another one? Yes,
We adopted it.
yes. So you move to report as amended. We have a motion to report as amended. Do we have a second? Okay. No further discussion. Everyone ready to vote? Vote on the electronic vote. Okay, the bill passes 18 to 1 with one abstention. Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, I have one more bill, House Bill 2310. House Bill 2310 deals with consumer finance companies, and I've been working with Commissioner Face on this, and there's a lot of work to be done, and I think Commissioner Face is willing to look at this over the next year, bring all the parties together to come back and try to make sure that we have a better product that addresses everyone's needs. So I would ask that we gently lay this bill on the table, and we'll work on this. And if anybody wants to, like Peter Farrell, if somebody wants to work on this, he's always likes to work on these out of session bills, but be glad to have it. But that's what I would ask you to do.
Okay. Sub 1 will be meeting in about 5 minutes.